I stood in the boardroom of Harrison Pharmaceuticals, watching my stepbrother sign the order that would release a drug into the market. A drug I knew would kill people. I had the evidence in my briefcase, clinical trial records showing 17 deaths that had been covered up, side effects that caused cardiac arrest, brain hemorrhaging, organ failure, but I couldn't stop him. Not yet. Because I wasn't really his stepsister. I was FBI Special Agent Sarah Chen, and I'd been undercover for 8 months waiting for this exact moment. My name is Sarah Chen, and this is the story of how a $10 billion inheritance became a murder weapon, how a family business became a crime scene, and how I watched my brother choose money over human lives, knowing I'd be the one to arrest him. The call came on a Wednesday morning. "Ms. Harrison, your father has passed away. Please come to Morrison and Associates for the reading of his will." I sat across the conference table from my stepbrother, Marcus Harrison. We'd barely spoken in the 8 months since I'd entered his life as his father's new stepdaughter. Our parents' whirlwind romance and marriage had been as much a shock to him as it had been. Well, as it would have been to me if any of it were real. But none of it was real. My mother, who'd married Dr. Richard Harrison, was actually FBI agent Linda Martinez. The marriage was a cover. The romance was an operation. And the grieving widow sitting beside me in black Chanel was one of the best undercover agents the Bureau had. Richard Harrison, pharmaceutical mogul, billionaire, father of one, was dead from a genuine heart attack at 64. What wasn't genuine was how much he'd cooperated with the FBI in his final months, setting up this exact scenario. "I'll keep this brief," the attorney said. "Dr. Harrison's estate, including Harrison Pharmaceuticals and all associated assets, is valued at approximately $12 billion. Marcus leaned forward. He was 38, handsome in that entitled prep school way, with sandy hair and the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. I'd studied his psychological profile extensively during my preparation for this assignment. Narcissistic personality disorder with sociopathic tendencies, high intelligence, no empathy, perfect storm for corporate criminality. The company and all patents are to be divided equally between his biological son, Marcus Harrison, and his stepdaughter, Sarah Harrison. You are now co-owners of Harrison Pharmaceuticals, each holding 50%. Marcus's jaw tightened. I could see the calculation behind his eyes, running numbers, assessing strategies, determining how to eliminate me as an obstacle. He left half the company to her? She's been in the family for less than a year. Your father was very clear in his wishes. The company is yours jointly. You'll need to work together to manage it. I played my role perfectly, surprised, grateful, overwhelmed. Years of undercover training made the performance effortless. I don't know anything about running a pharmaceutical company. Then you'll learn, Marcus said coldly. Or you'll sell me your shares. I'll give you $2 billion cash. More money than you'd see in 10 lifetimes. I need time to think. You have 24 hours. After that, the offer drops to $1 billion. That night, I met with my handler in a secure location, a coffee shop we'd swept for surveillance devices 3 times that week. He offered you $2 billion to disappear, Agent Linda Martinez said. She'd dropped the Grieving Widow Act the moment we were alone. That's more aggressive than we anticipated. He's scared. Richard's decision to split the company blindsided him. He probably assumed he'd inherit everything. Richard knew that. That's why he structured it this way, to force Marcus to interact with you, to make decisions you could document. I stirred my coffee, thinking about the 8 months I'd spent building this cover. Tell me again why Richard cooperated. Why would a father help the FBI build a case against his own son? Martinez's expression softened. Because 3 years ago, Richard's wife, Marcus's mother, died from an experimental drug another pharmaceutical company rushed to market. They'd covered up fatal side effects to make quarterly earnings projections. Richard sued them, but they had legal protections. No one went to prison. That's when he started noticing patterns in his own company. test results that didn't match, deaths attributed to pre-existing conditions. Marcus making decisions that prioritized profits over safety. He realized his son had become exactly what he hated. So he called the FBI. He called me. Spent 2 years feeding us information. When his heart started failing, he knew he was running out of time. That's when we created this operation. The whirlwind romance, the marriage, you entering the family. Everything designed to give us an inside witness when Richard was gone. I thought about Richard Harrison, a man I'd never actually met, only studied through files and recordings. A man who'd sacrificed his reputation, his company, and his relationship with his only son to stop dangerous drugs from killing people. I wish I could have met him, I said quietly. He watched you work for 2 months before he died, read all your reports. He told me something before his heart attack. He said you reminded him of who he used to be. Someone who believed pharmaceutical companies should save lives, not take them. What did Marcus think of his father at the end? Martinez's face darkened. Marcus visited Richard once in the hospital, spent the whole time talking about quarterly projections and pipeline drugs. When Richard tried to talk about Marcus's mother, about ethics, Marcus shut him down. Said sentiment was bad for business. That was their last conversation. No wonder Richard had been willing to destroy his son. Marcus had already destroyed the relationship years ago. The next morning, I arrived at Harrison Pharmaceuticals headquarters in Cambridge, Massachusetts. The building was sleek glass and steel, filled with researchers in white coats working on drugs that could save or end lives. The security guard recognized me. "Good morning, Ms. Harrison. Welcome back. I'm so sorry for your loss." "Thank you, Robert. How's your daughter?" "Much better, ma'am. The new asthma medication is working wonderfully. Your stepfather was a good man." I smiled, thinking about how Richard had personally ensured that employees' families had access to the company's medications. A small kindness that Marcus would probably eliminate as unnecessary expense once he had full control. Marcus's assistant led me to the executive floor. "Mr. Harrison is in the research wing. He asked that you meet him there." I found Marcus in a conference room with a dozen people in suits. Lawyers, executives, scientists. The walls were covered with molecular diagrams and financial projections. On the screen behind him was a 3D rendering of a drug molecule rotating slowly. "Sarah, perfect timing. Let me introduce you to our flagship product, Neuraxil. It's a breakthrough treatment for Alzheimer's disease. 5 years in development, $1 billion invested, and it's about to make us very, very rich." One of the scientists, Dr. Emily Patel, according to her name tag, pulled up clinical trial data. She was in her early 40s, competent-looking, with the slightly tired eyes of someone who worked too many hours. I'd researched her too. Brilliant researcher, published extensively, but with a history of raising ethical concerns that were always overruled by management. Neuraxil works by targeting the amyloid plaques in the brain that cause Alzheimer's. In our trials, we saw a 70% reduction in cognitive decline. It's revolutionary. "FDA approval?" I asked, knowing the answer. "Imminent," Marcus said, his eyes gleaming. "We submitted our final data package last month. Approval could come any day, and we have buyers lined up. Insurance companies, hospitals, international markets. First-year sales projections are $6 billion. Another executive, James Chen, CFO, pulled up financial models. Conservative estimates put Neuraxil's lifetime value at $40 billion. This is the biggest pharmaceutical launch in a decade. "That's incredible," I said, watching Marcus carefully. He showed no hesitation, no doubt. Just excitement about profit. Marcus smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "It is, which is why I need your answer. Sell me your shares now or stay on board and we'll both be billionaires within a year. But I need to know you're committed." I looked at the data on the screen, the success rates, the projected earnings, and I thought about the classified folder back in my apartment. The real clinical trial data that Richard had copied before his death. Data showing Neuraxil killed 17 people in late-stage testing. "I'm in," I said. "Partners." Marcus shook my hand. His grip was firm, calculated. "Partners. Welcome to the pharmaceutical business, sister." That evening, I met with my handler, FBI Supervisory Special Agent David Torres, in a safe house across town. The location changed every meeting, standard protocol for sensitive operations. Torres was in his 50s, a veteran agent who'd spent 20 years investigating corporate crime. He'd worked with Richard Harrison from the beginning, building the case piece by piece. "He's moving forward with Neuraxil," I reported. "Plans to release it the moment FDA approves." "Did he mention the deaths?" Torres asked, pulling up files on his laptop. "Not a word. He's presenting the drug as perfectly safe. Revolutionary. A miracle cure." Torres pulled up files on his laptop, the real clinical trial data that Richard Harrison had provided to the FBI before his death. 17 participants died during Phase 3 trials. Cardiac arrest, brain hemorrhages, liver failure. Harrison Pharmaceuticals covered it up by altering trial records, bribing investigators, and misreporting cause of death. He clicked through photos of the victims, elderly people with kind faces, someone's grandparents, parents. People who'd volunteered for trials hoping to slow their decline, trusting that the pharmaceutical company would keep them safe. Margaret Bowman, age 73, died of cardiac arrest 16 hours after her first dose. Death certificate says natural causes, but the autopsy Richard ordered privately shows massive heart damage, consistent with Neuraxil toxicity. Thomas Chen, no relation to me, age 68, brain hemorrhage 3 days into treatment. Official report blamed a fall. Private medical examiner found evidence of drug-induced aneurysm. Catherine Lopez, age 70, liver failure after 2 weeks. Attributed to pre-existing conditions, but her medical history showed perfect liver function before Neuraxil. 17 stories like this. 17 people who'd trusted the system and died because of that trust. "And Marcus knows?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Richard confirmed Marcus was aware and approved the cover-up. He's been the one driving the decision to release despite the deaths. Richard confronted him multiple times. Marcus's response was always the same: the benefits outweigh the risks. I studied the faces of the victims. "We need him to release the drug," I said. "That's our case. Knowing it's dangerous and releasing it anyway. That's manslaughter, fraud, and about a dozen federal charges." "Exactly, but we can't arrest him for planning to release a dangerous drug. We need him to actually do it. That's when intent becomes action, planning becomes crime. People will die." Torres looked at me seriously. "We'll be ready. Once FDA approval comes through and Marcus orders production, we'll have teams at every major distributor. The moment the drug starts shipping, we pull it and arrest him. We're talking hours of exposure, days at most. We can minimize the damage, but not prevent it. We can't prevent what's already happened, those 17 deaths and trials, but we can prevent the thousands that would follow if Neuraxil goes to full market." That's what Richard wanted. That's why he sacrificed everything. I thought about the security guard at Harrison Pharmaceuticals, thanking me for his daughter's asthma medication. About Dr. Patel's tired eyes after long hours trying to develop life-saving drugs. About all the good people in the pharmaceutical industry trying to help patients. And then I thought about Marcus, calculating revenue projections while people died from his products. "What if he gets suspicious?" I asked. "What if he figures out I'm FBI? Then we move early and hope we have enough evidence to convict. But that's a last resort. The longer you can maintain cover, the more evidence we gather. Recorded conversations, documents, direct testimony of his intent. That's what sends him to prison for life instead of a few years on a plea deal." The next week, a whistleblower reached out. I was in my office at Harrison Pharmaceuticals, a glass-walled space with a view of the Charles River, when my assistant buzzed me. Ms. Harrison, there's someone here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's urgent, about Neuraxil. Send her in. The woman who entered was in her 60s, well-dressed but nervous. Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched a folder to her chest. Ms. Harrison, my name is Dr. Janet Reeves. I worked on the Neuraxil clinical trials until 6 months ago. Please sit. What can I do for you? Dr. Reeves sat down but perched on the edge of the chair, ready to flee. Years of working in corporate environments had taught me to recognize people who were taking enormous personal risks. This woman was terrified. I need you to know what really happened during those trials. People died. 17 people. And your stepfather. He knew. We all knew. But Marcus ordered us to cover it up. She pulled out the folder with shaking hands. I kept copies. I knew someone had to have proof. Death certificates, lab reports, autopsy findings that were suppressed, it's all here. I took the folder, pretending to see the data for the first time. My training allowed me to react with exactly the right level of shock, enough to be believable, but not so much that it seemed performative. This can't be right, I said, flipping through pages I'd already memorized. Dr. Patel told me the trials were successful, 70% improvement in cognitive function. They were successful at making money, not at saving lives. Ms. Harrison, if Neuraxil is released, people will die. Hundreds of people. Maybe thousands. You have to stop it. Does Marcus know about this? Dr. Reeves laughed bitterly. Marcus approved every cover-up. He's known from the beginning. After Margaret Bowman died, I went to him directly. Told him we needed to halt trials and investigate. Do you know what he said? What? He said, old people die all the time. Unless you can prove it was definitely the drug, we continue. When I showed him the autopsy findings, he said they were inconclusive. When Thomas Chen died, Marcus blamed it on the fall. When Catherine Lopez's liver failed, he said she had a pre-existing condition we'd missed. Her voice broke. 17 people died, and every single time Marcus found a way to blame it on something other than Neuraxil. He wanted this drug approved. Nothing was going to stop him. Why didn't you go to the FDA or the police? Dr. Reeves's eyes filled with tears. I tried. Harrison Pharmaceuticals has lawyers who made it very clear what would happen if I went public. They'd destroy my career, sue me for violating NDAs, claim I was stealing proprietary information. They even threatened my pension, 30 years of retirement savings gone if I talked. She wiped her eyes. But I have a grandson with early onset Alzheimer's. He's only 48 years old, a professor at MIT. Brilliant man, his whole life ahead of him, and this disease is stealing it from him day by day. If Neuraxil gets approved, his doctors will prescribe it. They'll tell him it's a breakthrough treatment, and it might kill him. I can't let that happen. I can't let my silence kill my grandson. She started crying in earnest now. Please, you have the power to stop this. Your father gave you 50% of the company. Marcus can't release Neuraxil without your approval. Use that power. Save my grandson. Save all the people who'll take this drug thinking it will help them. I reached across the desk and took her hand. Dr. Reeves, I promise you, I will do everything in my power to make sure the truth comes out. Your grandson won't take Neuraxil. No one will. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you. After she left, I sat alone in my office, staring at the folder. This was the moment. I could take this straight to Marcus, confront him, force him to acknowledge what he knew. But that would tip him off, make him careful, possibly abandon Neuraxil altogether and move on to the next dangerous drug, the next cover-up. We'd lose our chance to build a case that would send him to prison for life. Or I could do nothing, wait for him to hang himself. Let him release the drug, document his choices, and arrest him with irrefutable evidence. But that meant more people would die. People like Dr. Reeves's grandson trusting their doctors, taking a medication they believed was safe. I made the decision that would haunt me later. I put the folder in my desk drawer and locked it. Then I called Torres. "We have a whistleblower," I reported. "Dr. Janet Reeves. She brought me evidence of the cover-ups. What should I do?" "Nothing," Torres said. "If you act on it, Marcus will know something's wrong, but document everything. Get Dr. Reeves's contact information. We'll bring her in as a witness when we arrest Marcus. She has a grandson who might take Neuraxil. Then we make sure we move before he gets a prescription. What's his name?" "Professor something at MIT. She didn't say his full name." "I'll find him. We'll make sure he's safe, I promise." After hanging up, I stared out at the Charles River, watching boats drift by. Somewhere out there were thousands of Alzheimer's patients waiting for a cure, trusting that pharmaceutical companies like Harrison would develop safe treatments. And here I was, sitting on evidence that could stop a dangerous drug, but choosing to wait because it would build a stronger legal case. Was I any different from Marcus? He'd calculated that profits justified deaths. I was calculating that convictions justified risks. But I didn't have a choice. Not really. This was the job. This was what Richard Harrison had sacrificed everything to make possible. I just had to hope we could stop Marcus before too many people paid the price for his greed. That evening, I found Marcus in his office reviewing production timelines. The room was dark except for his computer screen, casting his face in a pale blue glow that made him look almost inhuman. "We need to talk about something," I said, closing the door behind me. Marcus looked up, instantly wary. His instincts were sharp. He could sense when someone was about to become a problem. "About?" "I had a visitor today, Dr. Janet Reeves. She showed me concerning information about the Neuraxil trials." Marcus's expression went cold. The friendly mask he wore in board meetings evaporated, replaced by something calculating and dangerous. "What kind of information?" "Deaths. 17 trial participants who died from side effects. She claims the data was covered up, that you personally ordered the cover-up." "Dr. Reeves was fired for incompetence and is now trying to sabotage this company. Whatever she told you is lies designed to derail our most profitable product. She's bitter, vindictive, and completely unreliable. She had documentation, death certificates, lab reports, autopsy findings. Fabricated. Sarah, pharmaceutical trials are complex. People die during trials for all sorts of reasons. Age, pre-existing conditions, unrelated illnesses. The FDA reviewed all of our data and found Neuraxil safe and effective. Are you going to trust some disgruntled ex-employee over the federal government?" "I want to see the raw trial data, everything." Marcus stood up, his friendly mask slipping further. "No. I own half this company. I have a right." "You have a right to nothing. You're not a scientist. You're not a researcher. You don't have the training to interpret clinical data. You're my father's widow's daughter, who lucked into an inheritance. I've spent 15 years building this company. I'm not letting you destroy it because some crazy woman filled your head with conspiracy theories. If the drug is dangerous, it's not dangerous. Jesus, Sarah, do you think I'd release something that would hurt people? I'm not a monster. Neuraxil is safe. The trials proved it. And in 6 months, it's going to help millions of people and make us both billionaires. Unless you fuck it up." He stepped closer, using his height to intimidate me. I stood my ground, knowing the wire taped to my chest was recording every word. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to forget about Dr. Reeves. You're going to stop asking questions, and you're going to support this company. Or I will make your life hell. I'll tie you up in lawsuits for the next decade. I'll freeze you out of every decision. I'll make you regret ever joining this family." Is that a threat? It's a promise. My father made a mistake leaving you half this company, but that's a mistake I can fix. Legal challenges to the will, competency hearings. I have lawyers who can make you wish you'd never heard the name Harrison. Your father knew exactly what he was doing. Marcus's eyes narrowed. What's that supposed to mean? It means he knew what kind of person you were, and he tried to stop you the only way he could. For a moment, I thought Marcus might actually hit me. His hand clenched into a fist, his jaw tight with rage. Then he smiled, cold and dangerous. Get out of my office, and stay out of my way. I reported the confrontation to Torres that night in the safe house. He's rattled, Torres said, listening to the recording. Good, keep pushing, make him paranoid. Paranoid people make mistakes. He's also dangerous. I think he'd hurt me if he thought I was a real threat. You're wearing a wire at all times, right? Yes, and I've been documenting every interaction. Then we have everything. His threats, his refusal to investigate safety concerns, his attempts to intimidate you into silence. It's all evidence of consciousness of guilt. He knows Neuraxil is dangerous and he's trying to cover it up. But not evidence of releasing a deadly drug. That's what we need. Torres nodded. FDA approval came through this afternoon. Neuraxil is officially approved for market. Now we wait for Marcus to order production and distribution. Once those orders go out, we move. How long? Days, maybe hours. He's going to want to move fast now that he has approval. Just stay close and stay safe. We're almost done. The next morning, Marcus called an emergency board meeting. The conference room was packed. Executives, scientists, lawyers, investors. Everyone who'd worked on Neuraxil for the past 5 years, gathering to celebrate their success. Ladies and gentlemen, I have incredible news. The FDA has approved Neuraxil. We are officially cleared to begin production and distribution. The boardroom erupted in applause. Executives shaking hands, scientists hugging, everyone celebrating the culmination of years of work and billions of dollars in investment. I watched them celebrate and wondered how many knew about the deaths, how many had seen the real data, how many had chosen to look the other way because their careers depended on Neuraxil's success. I've already contacted our manufacturing partners, Marcus continued, his voice rising with excitement. We can have the first batch of 1 million doses ready in 2 weeks. I'm ordering immediate production to begin. By the end of the month, Neuraxil will be in pharmacies across the country. I stood up. The room went silent. Before we start production, I want independent testing. I want an outside lab to verify the safety data. Marcus's face went red. We've been through years of FDA review. We don't need... I'm not comfortable releasing a drug that's been questioned by former researchers without additional verification. As a 50% owner, I'm requesting a safety review before production begins. And I'm denying that request. This is a business decision, and the business decision is to move forward. Now. Then I'm calling for a board vote. All in favor of delaying production until independent safety testing is complete? I raised my hand. I looked around the room, hoping someone else would join me. Dr. Patel looked uncomfortable. A few other scientists shifted in their seats, but no one else raised their hand. Marcus smiled triumphantly. Motion fails. Production begins immediately. Meeting adjourned. As everyone filed out, Marcus pulled me aside roughly. You just made a very big mistake. I'm trying to make sure we're not releasing a dangerous drug. You're trying to sabotage this company, but it's not going to work. Neuraxil is getting released, with or without your cooperation. Marcus, if people die, they won't. And even if some people have adverse reactions, that's the risk with any medication. We have legal protections. Warnings on the label, informed consent forms. No one can sue us successfully. Is that really all you care about? Legal protections? What about moral responsibility? Marcus leaned in close, his voice dropping to a whisper so the wire would barely pick it up. Let me tell you something about the pharmaceutical business, little sister. Every drug has risks. Every medication kills some people. That's just reality. We do a cost-benefit analysis. How many people does it help versus how many does it hurt? Neuraxil helps 70% of patients. If it hurts 30%, that's still a net positive. Except the people it hurts die. Everyone dies eventually. At least this way, millions of people get a few more good years with their loved ones before they do. That's worth the trade-off. You're insane. I'm practical, and I'm rich. And in 2 weeks, you'll be rich too, whether you like it or not. So stop fighting and just accept it. He walked away, leaving me alone in the boardroom. I pulled out my phone and texted Torres. He's ordering production, moving in 2 weeks. Torres's response came immediately. We're ready. Keep recording everything. Almost done. Almost done? But how many people would die before we were completely done? That night, I broke into Marcus's office. I had security codes, part of my access as co-owner. The building was empty except for night security, and they knew me. Robert, the guard whose daughter I'd asked about, waved me through with a smile. Working late, Ms. Harrison? Just need to grab some files. Won't be long. Take your time, ma'am. Building's all yours. I felt guilty lying to him. Robert was a good man. He had no idea his employer was a killer or that I was an undercover FBI agent about to bring down the company he worked for. Marcus's office was on the top floor, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Cambridge. His computer was password protected, but Torres had provided me with a device that could bypass it. I plugged it in and waited while it cracked his security. Files started appearing on my screen. I copied everything to an encrypted drive. Emails, financial records, the original clinical trial data showing the deaths and the cover-up. Then I found something worse. A folder labeled Risk Assessment, Neuraxil Post-Market. I opened it, my hands starting to shake as I read. It was a projection of expected deaths after market release. Marcus and his analysts had calculated that Neuraxil would kill approximately 5,000 people in the first year, based on adverse reaction rates from the trials. But they'd also calculated that treating 10 million Alzheimer's patients at $5,000 per treatment course would generate $50 billion in revenue. There was a memo from Marcus to the board, dated 3 months ago. While adverse event mortality is projected at approximately 5,000 deaths in year 1, this is 0.9% of treated population. The revenue projections of 50 by die justify moving forward with full market release. Legal analysis estimates maximum liability at $2 in settlements and wrongful death suits, still leaving 48B net profit. Risk-reward analysis strongly favors immediate release upon FDA approval. Recommend proceeding with aggressive marketing campaign to maximize market penetration before adverse events become widely known. He knew. He'd always known. And he decided that 5,000 deaths were an acceptable price for $48 billion in profit. He'd even calculated when people would start dying, when the deaths would become public knowledge, and how to maximize profits before the truth came out. This wasn't just manslaughter. This was premeditated mass murder with a spreadsheet. I was copying the files when I heard footsteps in the hallway. I unplugged the device and ducked under the desk just as the office door opened. "I know you're here, Sarah." Marcus's voice. He'd been waiting for this. Probably watching security cameras, waiting to catch me in the act. "I watched you on the security cameras. Breaking into my office. Stealing proprietary information. That's corporate espionage. I could have you arrested." I stood up slowly, the encrypted drive in my pocket. "You're planning to release a drug you know will kill thousands of people. 5,000 in the first year alone." Marcus's face showed no surprise, no guilt, just cold calculation. "You found the risk assessment. You calculated how many people would die, and you decided it was worth it for the money." I decided that helping 10 million people was worth the risk that some would have adverse reactions. That's called medicine, Sarah. Every drug has risks. Aspirin kills people. Penicillin kills people. But we still use them because they save more lives than they take. aspirin doesn't have a 5,000 death projection in year 1. Because 10 million people don't take aspirin for Alzheimer's. You're comparing apples to oranges. The real comparison is, what's worse? 5,000 deaths from adverse reactions or 10 million people suffering through Alzheimer's without treatment? I'm choosing to help the 10 million. You're choosing profit over people. I'm choosing the greatest good for the greatest number. That's utilitarianism. That's ethics. Maybe you should have studied philosophy instead of whatever you studied. I studied law enforcement, and I know premeditated murder when I see it. Marcus pulled out his phone. I'm calling security. You're fired, effective immediately. And I'm pursuing legal action for theft of trade secrets, industrial espionage, and breach of fiduciary duty. You can't fire me. I own half the company. Watch me. I have the board's support. You'll be tied up in litigation for years. By the time it's resolved, Neuraxil will have made us so rich it won't matter. And you'll be bankrupt from legal fees. Security arrived. 2 guards who looked uncomfortable with the situation. One of them was Robert. He looked confused and hurt, like I'd betrayed him. Escort Ms. Harrison from the building. She's no longer permitted on the premises. If she returns, she's to be arrested for trespassing. As they walked me out, Robert whispered, "Ms. Harrison, what's going on? Why would you break into Mr. Harrison's office?" I'm sorry, Robert. I can't explain, but I promise you, everything I did was to protect people, including your daughter. My daughter? Just trust me, and maybe start looking for another job. Marcus called after me as they led me to the elevator. You should have taken the $2 billion when I offered it, Sarah. Now you get nothing, and I get everything. I met Torres at the safe house with my hands still shaking. Marcus had caught me copying files and thrown me out, but I'd already secured everything. The death projections, the cover-ups, the plans to release Neuraxil knowing it would kill thousands. Torres read the documents and went pale. Marcus wasn't negligent. He was planning mass casualties for profit. We waited 4 more days, long enough for the first shipment to reach pharmacies. By nightfall, people across the East Coast were taking the drug. And by midnight, the first victim died. Judith Brenner, 72. The FDA alerted the FBI and Torres called me. It was time. At dawn, agents raided Harrison Pharmaceuticals. Marcus was in his office when they cuffed him. He looked confused until he saw my badge. Then the confusion turned into hatred. He called it betrayal. I called it stopping a killer. 4 people died before the recall. Their families wanted answers. Dr. Patel lost her own father-in-law and blamed herself. I told her the truth. None of this was her fault. The blame rested on Marcus alone. 6 months later, the trial began. The jury heard Marcus's own recordings. Acceptable losses. Revenue justifies the risk. The greatest good for the greatest number. They saw the risk assessments, the memos, the PR plans. Witness after witness testified about ignored warnings and hidden deaths. The families of the victims told their stories. The jury took 8 hours. Guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced Marcus to life without parole. More than 600 years for the 21 people who died under his decisions. As he was led away, he said I'd betrayed him. I told him the truth. His father wasn't a traitor. He was the only hero in the room. This is Special Agent Sarah Chen. Some killers use guns, others use spreadsheets. My stepbrother Marcus Harrison killed 21 people without ever lifting a weapon. He approved a drug he knew was dangerous because the profit looked bigger than the risk. To him, those lives were numbers. Acceptable losses. That is what made him dangerous. When human lives become math problems, murder becomes a business choice. Thanks to whistleblowers like Dr. Janet Reeves and people like Richard Harrison, Neuraxil was stopped before thousands more died. But the fight never ends. There will always be another company chasing money over safety. Another drug pushed forward with hidden data. If this story spoke to you, like and subscribe for more true stories about corruption and the people who try to stop it. And remember this the next time you take a prescription. Someone made a decision about your safety. Most choose to protect you. Some don't. Stay aware. Ask questions. Speak up if something feels wrong, because the only thing standing between you and the next Neuraxil is people who refuse to treat human life like a statistic.